Barry, and I'm a multi-dimensional, multidisciplinary paper artist. I've always worked with different materials. Paper sort of came to me because it was such an easy and malleable material to work with. I had been doing a lot of set design and costume design before, like 10 years ago. And then a lot of sets were being made out of paper and installations. And I really fell in love with the material, so I started to use it more and more in my own artwork. A lot of times I take the paper and I mix it with different other materials like plastic or a lot of recycled materials, miniatures. So the paper is always a base of my work, but it's a really nice substance to sort of create with and to sculpt all kinds of things with and mix with other materials. So typically when I do a piece, I'll just sketch it out by hand in my sketchbook, which is a bit of a mess, but lovely. And just to get the idea down, I'll do something like this. So, I'll do a couple different renditions of how it might look. And then I'll move on to the computer. And this is specifically for my paper illustrative work, and draw it on the computer because I'll need these different vectors and stuff to cut the actual paper from on this machine. So then I'll put the coloring in, and this is a blueprint for how I'm going to do the illustration. And then I start cutting all the pieces and slotting them together like a puzzle and putting it together by hand in hand painting. In this piece here, I did some watercolors. Sometimes I use airbrush. But yeah, I think it just brings the illustration to life. Sometimes it's done three-dimensionally. Sometimes it's 2D and flat like this one is. So that works really well for my illustrative work. For my more sculptural work, like one of these pieces up here, I still sketch it out and I still have an idea, a concept that I work with. But then I go straight to just building the interior skeleton of the piece. So typically out of cardboard. Recycled cardboard is preferable if it's not soiled or deformed or anything. Just because it's nice to reuse materials, and we have an abundance of materials in this planet that we can pick from. So I'll use sometimes discarded poster tubes or cardboard that I find from packaging. I'll order something and it will come in a box and then I'll be reusing the box. So I try not to waste anything. And then I'll move on to the paper, and the paper is typically a new material, but I use all kinds of different papers, sometimes handmade papers, sometimes papers that are already pre-pressed. I'll manipulate it, I'll cut it, I'll fold it, I'll paint it, and then I'll sculpt it into all the individual pieces that will go on to one of my sculptures. So yeah, this is how I make a lot of my paper pieces. I like to play with scale. I think I'm obsessed with miniature things. So as you can see here, I do a lot of model building. This is for my podcast, Secret Place Berlin. And this specifically is from a plant nursery. It's a story I did in episode 2 about a 300-year-old plant nursery in Berlin. So this is where I combine the materials. I'll build a miniature sculpture of the building and then add miniature trees and foliage and all kinds of things. And then I also work in really big. This has been something that I've been playing with a lot in the past, but I've been really actually exploring more this year. So the pieces, the huge roses that I've been creating, this is more to take these small little or average size little structures that I've always been working with and just blow it up and sort of make a a garden, if you will, or a fantasy land that you can walk through and be inside. And a lot of these pieces that I'm creating that are really huge and blown up, it's supposed to give you sort of this impact of nature. Specifically the spaces that I've been putting these pieces in, these roses and giant diamonds and jewels, they're going in already existing structures. So like, you know, churches and sort of old abandoned prisons or something like this. A lot of like urban exploration sites, because I really love these kind of places. And this idea that this idea of nature is just like taking over our structures when we're not taking care of them or when we're not present in them anymore. I actually didn't originally mean to come to Berlin. I had been living all over the world, London, New York, Los Angeles, Montreal. And I guess I was just, you know, home is always home. You never actually leave it. And it's still a huge inspiration for me because it was, you know, where I come from, the mountains, the lakes, all the nature. It's always sort of ingrained in me and ingrained in my work, and like the colors and the vibrancy and just being able to be outside and to be amongst trees and birds and all kinds of wild animals. But I think Berlin is sort of special because I didn't really know what to expect when I came here. I actually came here just to visit, and then one thing led to another and I was able to actually stay. And then by staying here, I found that I had roots in Germany that I didn't know about. So that was kind of cool. Like there were some family ties there that opened up to me once I sort of made my place here, and it felt more and more comfortable to be here. And also, like, while I was first here, I started exploring the city. You know, like a lot of cities that I've lived in, I just started exploring, and you know, the first thing I did was buy a bike and just hit the road and see what's out there. And you know, this fueled my podcast, Secret Place Berlin, where I just would go on my bike or be waiting for a train or be a passenger in a vehicle, and I would just see something or experience something that's, wow, what is that? Because I think Berlin is special for a city of, it's a city of layers. It's, you know, there's constantly really interesting histories that you can just dig into. I mean, we know a lot about, you know, some the history of like World War II and some of the darker history and the history that Berlin's known for. But I'm kind of interested in this and also all these small little histories that are happening. You know, what was happening behind the wall, like in the GDR, or what's happening now with the computer game museum. You know, how did that get started? You know, just how are people functioning in this city? And this podcast is sort of like for me, like all these little case studies of being like, okay, well, what is the feeling? What are all these little subcultures that are happening, and what are they creating, and where are they living, and how are they living? And I think it's nice because it, you know, brings all kinds of worlds together and really understands like the personality and the vibrancy of the city. And yeah, I enjoy discovering that, and I keep discovering more and more. So for my podcast, Secret Place Berlin, I talk about all these really cool little secret or not so secret spots that I find on my bicycle or waiting on a train platform, or sometimes by accident, sometimes on purpose. And for each episode, I talk about how I found it, its history, and then maybe where it's at now, the place and the people involved. And then I work with a really great musician by the name of Una Andreas. She goes by Hyperia. And she does all the music and all the production. And then I also create an illustration or a miniature for each episode that I'll photograph and then have printed on postcards that listeners can buy and then trade amongst each other, send to their friends and family. And I think it's a really nice thing because, I mean, now with COVID and the pandemic, we can't really travel, but we can travel in our own cities. At least in Berlin we can. So this is a really nice way to be like, here, I can send you a postcard, greetings from Berlin. Whether you live here or live somewhere else, I'll send you one, and then depending on the Patreon tier that you're subscribed to, you can get another one and send it to someone you know and like. In the future, I'd like to keep growing, in the future, I would like to keep creating episodes for Secret Place Berlin. I have a ton more things and places and people and stories I want to talk about, and I want to grow my listener platform there. But I would also like to continue doing my sculptural paperwork and sort of combine the two. So, since the podcast is more like case studies and how people live and how they have lived in Berlin, I like to sort of envision creating my paperwork in the line of how do we envision a city? How do we envision just a healthier city, a greener city, a place that's more functional for people in general, whether that's being able to grow food in our neighborhood or have more, Spielstraßes in the neighborhood. I want to sort of take this knowledge and sort of these case studies and apply it to how we could actually live better, especially in like post-corona times, and how we can just function more healthy as a society with the environment, with each other, with our planet, with everything, and advance ourselves in more of a positive, physical, mental way.